The morning the HOA president tried to trespass onto my land, I knew something inside me had finally snapped. But not in the way they expected. It wasn't fear or anger that surged through me. It was something colder, sharper, the kind of feeling that tells you the only way forward is through. You see, most people underestimate a rancher. They think we're simple folk, too busy mucking stalls and hauling feed to know anything about legal codes or property rights. The HOA certainly thought so. They thought they could bully me into selling, or bending, or breaking. They thought a woman living alone on 200 acres of inherited family land would fold under pressure. But they were wrong. And if they'd listened, if they'd taken my warning seriously, maybe they wouldn't have ended up losing everything. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how it all started. The moment my boots hit the front porch that morning, I heard them before I saw them. The faint hum of an engine, the crunch of gravel, the slow, deliberate opening of a car door. Not the confident slam of someone who belonged, but the careful quiet of someone who knew they didn't. I wiped my hands on my jeans, leaned on the railing, and waited. A few seconds later, the HOA president herself, Pamela Dunn, emerged from behind her shiny gray SUV. Her stiletto sunk instantly into the dust beside the drive, which was probably the most honest moment of her entire day. Behind her trailed two members of her board, both of whom looked like they'd stepped out of an overpriced golf club brochure. Pamela smoothed the wrinkles out of a pastel blazer, lifted her chin, and gave me a tight-lipped smile. "Good morning, Miss Carter," she said. It was, I replied. She didn't appreciate that. I could see it in the way her eye twitched. "We need to talk," she announced. "No," I corrected her. "You need something from me. Let's not pretend otherwise." Her face pinched. "We've sent multiple notices regarding the condition of your property." My property, 207 acres of grassland, barns, and homestead that had been in my family for 4 generations, long before the HOA even existed. You sent notices. I agreed. And I told you I'm not under your authority. That's debatable. Not to the county. Pamela's jaw clenched. She reached into a folder and pulled out papers with highlighted sections and bold fonts meant to intimidate people who didn't know better. "We believe your parcel does fall within the expanded governance of the Cedar Ridge HOA. The board voted. To annex land you don't own," I finished for her. "Yes, I saw the vote. Cute trick. Still illegal." "We disagree." "You'll lose." She gave me a sugary smile. "We'll see." Her board members shifted uncomfortably. They weren't used to being challenged. Pamela took a step closer. "We're giving you 30 days to comply." "With what?" She gestured vaguely toward my barns, pastures, and livestock. "The overall aesthetic of your ranch. It doesn't align with the neighborhood's look and feel." I laughed, out loud, hard. The Cedar Ridge neighborhood, neat rows of identical beige homes half a mile away, was barely a blip on the edge of my land. Those houses were only built 10 years ago. My family had been here since the 1800s. "You're worried my ranch doesn't fit your aesthetic." I repeated, "Sweetheart, my ranch is the reason your neighborhood even has a view." She flushed. "If you refuse to work with us, the HOA will pursue legal actions." I stepped off the porch. Slowly, deliberately, Pamela took a step back. "You listen to me," I said, my voice low. "I told you from the start that this land isn't yours to regulate. I warned you that you're overstepping. I warned you that pushing this any further will get messy." Pamela straightened her spine. "Is that a threat?" "No, a promise." She didn't like that either. Her eyes hardened. "Then you leave us no choice." She motioned to her board members. "Let's go. We'll let our lawyers handle this." They hurried back to the SUV. Gravel scattered as they sped off. I stood there watching the dust settle, feeling the first stirrings of what would later become my plan, a plan they never saw coming. By the next week, they'd mail me fines, then citations, then notices of violation, all of which I filed in a neat little stack on my kitchen table, unopened. But I kept every envelope. Evidence is a valuable thing. The second week, they sent an assessor who tried to cross my fence line without permission. My livestock guardian dogs escorted him back to his car before I even finished walking out the front door. The third week, they escalated. I woke one morning to the thumping roar of heavy machinery. Bulldozers, parked just past the entrance to my private road. HOA-branded work crews were unloading tools, acting like they had every right to be there. Pamela stood with them, a clipboard in her hand, smugness dripping off her like expensive perfume. "This is your final warning," she called out as I approached. "We're beginning clean-up efforts today." "Clean-up?" I echoed. "Of what?" "Unapproved structures. Debris. Livestock enclosures that don't meet community standards." I stared at her, then at the men about to dig into property that wasn't theirs, then back at her. "You're trespassing," I said, calmly, too calmly. This road served the entire neighborhood. "No," I said, "it serves my ranch. Always has. It's private. County records say so." "We petitioned to change that," she replied, "and until the matter is resolved, we're moving forward." That was the moment I knew the HOA wasn't just arrogant. They were reckless, desperate, even, and that meant they were vulnerable. Pamela tapped her clipboard. "Stand aside." I didn't move. "Are you really willing to escalate this?" she asked, exasperated. "What exactly do you think is going to happen if you keep resisting? You're one person. We're bored." That's when the coldness settled fully inside me. The clarity, the unshakable certainty. "Pamela," I said, "have you ever wondered why I warned you to back off? Why I kept telling you to leave this land alone?" She blinked, thrown off by the question. "What?" "Because I knew this would happen," I continued. "Because I knew you'd push past the point of no return. And now you have." "What are you talking about?" I gave her a slow, knowing smile. "You're about to find out." The truth was, I'd already prepared everything. Legal documents, historical land deeds, county filings, permits, environmental surveys, and something even more powerful. Something the HOA didn't know existed. But they were about to. And once the dust settled, the Cedar Ridge HOA wouldn't just regret messing with me. They'd never recover. Because they should have asked themselves one simple question before starting this war. What happens when the one person you underestimate the most is the only one who actually knows how the land works? They were about to learn the answer the hard way. Pamela and her board thought I'd crumble the moment they brought in bulldozers. They thought their shiny HOA seal had enough authority to override a century of land rights. They thought intimidation could do what legal standing could not. But as the saying goes, the ranch remembers. And mine was about to speak louder than any of them expected. The morning after Pamela's little construction stunt, I drove into town with a folder thicker than a family Bible. It held everything I'd been gathering for the last 3 weeks. As soon as the HOA sent their first threat, I'd started preparing for war. Not an emotional one. A legal, tactical, airtight war. I didn't go to the sheriff's office first. I went to the county registrar. The woman behind the desk, an older lady named Marla who'd known my grandfather, smiled when she saw me. "Morning, June," she said. "Heard you've had some excitement lately." That's one way to put it. I slid the folder across the counter. She flipped it open, eyebrows rising. "Lord Almighty, they really don't know who they're messing with, do they?" "No," I said, "but they will." She tapped the papers. "You want these logged today?" "As soon as possible." She stamped the first page and nodded. "Consider it done." Step 1, complete. Next, I drove straight to the sheriff's department. Sheriff McCall met me at the door before I even knocked. "Heard the HOA's been sniffing around your fences," he said. "More than sniffing. Trespassing. Attempted property destruction. Harassment. Take your pick." I handed him the second file, copies of notices, photos, timestamps, the bulldozers, even Pamela standing on my private road. The sheriff didn't say a word while he read. His jaw tightened with every page. After a moment, he closed the folder. "Well, hell," he said. "Looks like I need to pay Pamela Dunn a visit." "Not yet," I said. His brows rose. "You want me to wait?" "Yes. I want them comfortable, confident, Let them keep digging their own grave. He huffed a surprised laugh. You always did play the long game. Family tradition. All right then. Tell me when. Oh, I said, you'll know. Back at the ranch, Pamela was waiting. Her SUV sat crooked on the gravel like she'd slammed the brakes too hard. She stood with her arms crossed, one foot tapping furiously as if she could crack the earth with her heel. I stepped out of my truck and offered the friendliest smile I could muster. Pamela, twice in one day. I'm flattered. She didn't smile back. I've spoken to our lawyer. You're violating multiple provisions of the Cedar Ridge Community Code. I'm not in your community. That remains to be determined. No, I corrected her again. It really doesn't. She shoved a thick packet into my hands. Given your refusal to comply, we will be placing a lien on your property. I snorted. Pamela, you couldn't place a lien on my mailbox without legal standing. Our lawyer says otherwise. Your lawyer, I said slowly, is an HOA attorney. Mine is a land rights specialist and former state property commissioner. That made her falter. I continued, did you know this ranch is classified as protected agricultural land, and that my water rights and grazing permits are older than your entire neighborhood? Her mouth opened and closed like a stunned fish. And did you know, I added, that your bulldozers yesterday violated for separate county ordinances? What? She said, choking on the word. I held her gaze. I warned you. But she didn't listen. They never do. The real strike came 3 days later. At 10:04 a.m., just as the HOA board began their scheduled monthly meeting, 3 county trucks rolled into the Cedar Ridge Clubhouse parking lot. I didn't attend, but I had a perfect view from my fence line, binoculars in hand, dogs lounging at my feet. Sheriff McCall stepped out first, then 2 county inspectors, then the registrar's deputy with a clipboard full of freshly logged documents. Pamela burst out of the clubhouse doors, blanched and flustered. The sheriff approached her. I couldn't hear him, but I didn't need to. I knew exactly what he was saying. He handed her a stack of papers, trespassing notices, violation of private road access, illegal construction on non-governed land, attempted annexation without due process. The inspectors fired rapidly. Unpermitted use of heavy machinery, environmental disruption on protected land, destruction of watershed boundary markers, tampering with agricultural property. Pamela slumped visibly. Her board members swarmed around her in a panic. Then came the registrar's deputy with the final blow. He handed her the certified record confirming that my land, all 207 acres, was not only exempt from HOA governance, but legally barred from any future annexation due to historical trust protections tied to my grandfather's estate. Pamela grabbed the document so fast she nearly tore it. She skimmed it, horror twisting her face. She looked like a woman watching her entire kingdom collapse. And in a way, she was. Because without my land, the HOA's expansion plans were dead. The developers who backed Pamela's leadership had expected to buy a chunk of my property for a new road and recreational center. They'd already invested money, promised returns, sold future home lots. And now it was all gone. Pamela stumbled backwards, gripping her temple. The sheriff gestured to 2 workers unloading fencing from the county truck. They were there to reinstall the boundary signs they had illegally removed. Pamela's HOA now owed fines for every single one. By the time the county vehicles pulled away, Cedar Ridge looked like a storm had torn through. Not wind, not rain, but the consequences of their own arrogance. But my revenge wasn't finished yet, because I knew something the HOA didn't. My grandfather left me more than a ranch. He left me information, old survey maps, original water rights grids, photos of the land before the neighborhood existed, records of wildlife migration paths, including protected species still living on my property. 3 days after the county shutdown, I requested a full environmental impact investigation on the surrounding areas, including Cedar Ridge proposed expansion sites. I submitted everything, habitat records, protected grass species, the nesting sites near the ridgeline. The county approved the investigation. Cedar Ridge panicked, because if the land was declared environmentally sensitive, and it was, then not only would expansion be impossible, but the HOA would face additional restrictions. and I made sure those restrictions landed exactly where they deserved. 29 days later, the county posted the results publicly. Environmental Protection Zone declared. All future development halted. All construction plans void. All HOA expansion efforts permanently blocked. Pamela nearly fainted at the announcement. Several board members quit outright. Developers pulled out. Funding evaporated. Home values dipped. Residents revolted. The HOA emergency meeting lasted 6 hours. I sat on my porch the entire time, sipping coffee, watching the lights in the clubhouse blaze through the night like the last flicker of a dying flame. At midnight, their website updated. Cedar Ridge HOA, President resignation notice Pamela Dunn had stepped down. The next morning, she drove past my ranch road one final time. She didn't stop. She didn't glare or shout or threaten. She just drove. Slowly, quietly, defeated. I stood by the fence with my hands in my pockets and nodded as she passed. Not out of pity, out of finality. She ignored my warnings. She underestimated my history. She disrespected my land. And this ranch? It doesn't forgive. In the end, the HOA wasn't just shut down temporarily. It was dismantled piece by piece, until the only thing left was a cautionary tale whispered by new residents. Don't mess with a Carter ranch. Not unless you want to lose everything. And me? I went back to my work. My land. My quiet life. The fight was over. Justice served. Peace restored. Sometimes revenge doesn't require anger at all. Sometimes all it takes is letting the land speak for itself.